Hi everyone, Renako, chair of WeTalking Boys, here again to introduce to you our second episode in our first season of WeTalking, a podcast where we sit, we chill, and we talk all things Caribbean men. This podcast is brought to you with the support of our friends at the Canadian High Commission in Barbados, and today we are joined by all members of our executive team as we talking mental health for Men's Mental Health Month. Hope you enjoy. So hi Kareem, how has your week been?
Good evening, Renako. My week has been pretty long and tiring. Been filled with a lot of late nights, early mornings, but gotta make it somehow.
Got to make it somehow. That is entirely true.
Yes, sir.
Yep, yeah.
So I feel like that's how everybody week is, just like, just getting through.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
been crazy. Like I think mostly I'm finished with school, but I have more assignment to do. Um, so there's that. So pushing forward, basically.
Yeah. I totally feel well, not school, but I could agree with everybody else.
Yeah, that's one day at a time, honestly.
Yeah, and I mean I don't know if Trinidad is getting the heat.
And it's
No,
been
you say so.
ridiculous, but
It's pretty
today,
hot over here too.
so our water reserves it's under 30%. That's like the worst it's ever been. Um, but today we had a lot of rain. So it was kind of crazy. Because, well, as you all know, I'm involved in youth work. So we almost canceled our program today because of all the rain.
Interesting. That's interesting. That's
That is,
really
oh, I would like a little drizzle. Drizzle with breeze, though. Drizzle with breeze.
we got a little rain this week, man. We got a little rain this week, but it wasn't
But
too
we
much.
ain't get enough breeze, though.
This is St. Philip don't get any rain. So
What you mean, say, double?
I've heard people say that St. Philip don't get any rain.
Mm.
But yeah, welcome
All right.
guys. We are back again for
Yes, to episode two.
episode
Episode
2.
2.1.
2.1, 2.1, 2.1.
Yeah, 2.1.
And today we are joined by Kadeem.
Hey,
Yeah, Kadeem is a long-standing member of We Talking Boys
Yeah.
who
One of
left
the
us
OGs.
long ago in Barbados.
yeah.
And it's been a while since you left actually. Um yeah, yeah. And so instead of Kadeem, we have myself, Ornako, Gregory, and Makisi from the first episode. But again, I'll let them introduce themselves. So feel free to go ahead in any order.
In any order. But well, yes, Gregory Braffett over here from the first episode. Similar voice.
Yeah, and well, your friendly neighborhood is showing up.
Really funny name, actually.
Okay, Francis. Well, I'm not in Barbados this time, so we overseas now.
It is true. Oh, but yeah, because the first episode we were all in the same room, but now we're all separated.
Yep.
We're all separated.
So who knows? Maybe episode 3 or 4 or 5. We'll be that.
Never know. We'll see what our fortune brings. And today we are discussing mental health. And funny enough, Makisi and I, the conversation last time in episode 1 actually kind of slightly alluded to this. But we're going to talk a bit more in terms of mental health. And I must give a disclaimer: none of us are mental health experts. We are actually hoping to have a part 2 to this recording. Well, a part 2 to this episode, where we bring on a mental health expert, where we actually we're hoping to open the recording to all members of our Discord server, and we will have live questions and live conversations with the mental health expert. But without further ado, we did answer your input in terms of what how you cope in terms of mental health. And I would hand over to Greg.
Yes, please. So we did put out the question on the IG about how different people like to cope with their mental health and what's not. And it was a lot of overlapping. A lot of people seem to do the same thing basically, which is fear. And some of them, we had some people say to go for walks, they sit by the window, listen to music, play some games that zone out, that sort of stuff. Or, sit down and talk to somebody very close to you, somebody that you could, you know, trust and handle, just to have a conversation, which is honestly very, very powerful because not a lot of people have that opportunity. So I like that one in particular. Like having someone there that you could just go and talk to just to help you through some tough times is really, really good. I know for me personally, my mother for sure, MVP, I could get you with anything. Okay. But yeah.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, I think these are really good. These are some really good points. In terms of managing mental health. For me, though, more recently I've been on what is it called? Abbott Elementary. I'm probably mispronouncing that. So I've been trying to watch every single season. So like, yeah, more recently this week actually, I just turned off my phone, put my devices on do not disturb, and I was just cracking through episodes of Abbott Elementary. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That was a really nice show, by the way. That was a
Why
really,
you
really
say
nice.
it like that?
Was I the one who recommended it? Because I feel like I did.
Listen, you recommend a lot of my shows, but this one you didn't recommend. I think I
Okay.
recommended it to you this time.
No, actually not.
Oh,
Oh dear.
Jesus.
Yeah,
Makisa
I
got the
did recommend.
receipts. Makisa got the
I
receipts
did
now.
because well, that person recommended to me, so I was watching it on their behalf. So it could never be that you recommended it.
Sir, here, sir. Sorry. It was still a recommendation, right? Because I mean, anyways, let's not get up on it.
No, no. So continue.
What about
Ah.
Kadeem and well, another one for me, Gregory, as Kadeem is here. Um, I I'm laughing and yeah, and outside of in terms of when it comes to interesting days or long days, um, Kadeem is usually my one of the persons that I unfortunately spam. My apologies, Kadeem.
You're
Um,
good. You're good.
but yeah, I think having I think it was one comment that I addressed in terms of having somebody to talk to. I think that's cool. And but what are some of the ways that you guys do it? Kadeem, Mikisi, and do you relate to
Um,
anything that was said in the comments?
well, some ways I tend to deal with it is if I personally I don't like to feel like I putting any of my weight onto other people. So what I would do first is to ask them if they're like mentally or emotionally available to actually listen to me first, and if they are, then I talk to someone. But I know everyone deals with their own inner demons, so they're not always available. And I know Renako could attest to that. But if no one is available, then personally, sometimes I pick up a game or two, I go for a walk, listen to music. One time I actually tried, like, it wasn't raining too hard outside, it was just a light drizzle. And I just went outside and I sat on the bench, and that actually felt beyond peaceful.
I ain't gonna lie, right? I could fully see Kadeem sitting up on a bench, just look it up. That's really rare. That's something Kadeem would do. 100%. That is fully something Kadeem would do.
And it's something that was done.
Yeah. See, there you go.
But yeah, and honestly, being over here in the States is kind of harder because back home I could always just walk down to the beach and just chill by myself, whether it's by myself or with friends. But being here, and especially being a black person in the States, is you got to be a bit more careful about where you go and what time you go to certain places. Which I think I'm glad for the fact that in my area I haven't experienced much racism. I didn't want to say that word, but I couldn't think of another word. So that's good. I'm glad for that. But it still makes it kind of hard when some of your go-to options aren't available.
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna piggyback off of what you said, and I guess I'll kind of be um relating to what you said because I remember, and I think I shared this with you a couple of times. Obviously, when you first initially when you left, it was kind of hard because it was like can't drag Kadeem anywhere. Can't drag Kadeem anywhere anymore. And obviously, the other person's like Gregory Living's like Philip, and it's like y'all live far.
Yeah.
Like Philip is
Oh,
not far. Y'all just not motivated enough.
you're not motivated enough, huh? And then
Mm,
McKinsey is in a whole different country, right? Um, so yeah, I think I totally felt on that. Especially when you had in the early days when you had left it stuff like that and Greg, yeah. And other persons were like far away. But yeah, McKinsey, what about you? Because McKinsey's schedule is heavy.
Um, I think in the past, I would have leaned on persons a lot. But as you said, that my schedule is so heavy now, it's like I personally feel as though I don't have people to lean on like that. Um, but say what? But right now, actively, well, as you know, Renato, like I love to sit on in my car and just blast music. Um, I love to ovulate for my grandparents left the country a few months ago, and they left me the keys to their house. So, and their house is in the country. So, and when I say country, I mean like the bush side of the island, as most Trinidadians would say. So I would go there on weekends and just kick back because again, it's just me alone. So, I could do things when I want, move how I want, and it's just so peaceful to me. And I don't know if that's a good thing, but I feel as though I've become so, I don't know, happy with self, just so content with my own space. Like I don't need anyone else in my space. I actually don't need anyone to talk to about my problems. Um, which I would say I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, ever so often I would maybe lean on someone to talk to just get advice. Um, but I really just like my own space and just isolating myself, you know? So for me, music, isolation in terms of just going into my grandparents' house or just sitting down in my car. Um, I also love nature. So as I say, my grandparents' house are in the country. So I would just sit in the gallery sometimes and just look at the trees, look at the bush, observe the insects, the birds. And yeah, that's more or less me. I know, I think Gregory or someone mentioned video games. Like I love video games, but even those just get you stressed out sometimes. Because I feel as though games have gone from fun to more strategy, and it's giving me a headache at this point for some of these games. But yeah, it's still a love.
It's my go-to game to be quite honest. Have a good con. I think outside of these ways, I think Gregory, there was one person that mentioned kind of like a reflection type of thing, and I thought that was cool, and it kind of leads into what Makisi was saying about having his own space, whether it be in the car or whatever the case would be. I think that's cool.
Yeah, it's true though. Like sometimes isolation is just hit different. It is hit different, boy.
Yeah, especially when you're in the fields that we're in, where you have to deal with human interaction on a daily basis. You just want to get away from that. Because for me, it's like Saturday to Saturday, I have to interact with persons. So, like one day, that one day to myself,
Yep.
like heaven.
like
So
You know,
a
basically
lot.
that's breaking the norm. That's what it is. That's breaking the norm.
Yeah, I think a lot
getting
of
out of
people
the
really.
routine.
like I'm actually kind of glad I decided to stay home versus going to my grandparents' house. I'm dreading it, but at the same time, I'm recognizing that the week that I have ahead is going to be so hectic, right? So I need to stay in the city to ensure that I prepare properly versus going to the country and being ill prepared for things. But I'm gonna try to find ways to cope to prepare myself for next week.
Yeah, I think I just want to kind of like, um, for me as well, I remember, Makis was talking about his week. I remember, well, this week as well, I mean, was kind of rough for me for different emotions, so many different things were happening at once, this week. All things considered, obviously still being able to, having to go to work, still being able to do all the other things that you have to do during the week as a okay or moderately functioning adult in society. Um, and for me today, I kind of got that escape because there was no work. I didn't necessarily get away from the human interaction, but today I did a bit of driving and that was pretty cool for me. And I think for me that helped as well. And I think for me in terms of like there was something that came out this week that was kind of I think it was fun. It was human interaction, but it was fun and that helped. Um, which is actually, well, at the time of publication of this podcast, it's probably not going to be up, but it did some interest, a thing that I probably usually wouldn't do. So like, um, I was asked by a reporter, Nation News, so Barbados side, to speak on, to just answer some questions to be in a column tomorrow. Oh, sorry, tomorrow being Sunday Sun. So I think that was quite interesting. Um, I was actually encouraged to do it. I usually don't do it because people have their own views or whatever, but that was fun. And I think being able to kind of reflect on that session and kind of having conversations today was quite nice to see how the week ended versus how it started. So yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that's cool. It's actually really, really cool. I don't got nothing cool that happened in my week. It was honestly just very repetitive. Just work, home, back to work, home. Actually, no. I did do something interesting this week. I put color in my hair. That's the first time for how long I was growing my hair for like 2, 3 years. Well, yeah, almost 3 years. I say, you know what? I want some change, and I put some color in it.
What
So
color you put
that's
in it?
it was supposed to be like a copperish orangish color, but this is fully right.
When they tell you here's suppose boy.
And you need to drop a photo. That's what you need to do.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Matter of fact, but y'all will see real quick.
Oh, it's like it's for those people, they say that is it like a burnt orange type of thing? Because I can see both red
Yeah,
and
yeah,
orange.
yeah. You could say so. I'll say it
So
depends on
I
how the
think I was
lighting outside is. Honestly,
Yes, yes. So guys,
I
was
would
there
say
anything interesting else? Anything
no,
else that was interesting
I
this
mean
week?
yeah, so like I mentioned like the assignments and stuff. But this week really was kind of weird for me in terms of, you know, having a meeting with my manager and HR concerning my future with the company. Um, so like something brief, like the CEO stepped down for the company. So there's a lot of changes going on. So where I was supposed to transition from, uh, where I was supposed to transition from part-time to full-time, like that's kind of being on a pause. Um, so yeah, apart from that, like I had one of my uncles showed up for the first time in about like 10 years, which was crazy. But just uncovering that, for the last year, we've recognized that he's been struggling mentally. And I didn't like, yes, I knew it was bad, but like I didn't know how bad it was until um like I saw him and had a conversation with him because like my dad doesn't understand mental health, right? So I tried to talk to my dad about it in terms of how he was talking to my uncle, because he was really aggressive towards him, and you know I pulled my uncle aside, like we literally just sat down on the block, not really the block, but just right outside the house, on one of the like the pavement. We literally just sat there, like I was talking to him, and just recognizing that he really isn't in a good mental state because he's been cutting himself. He's been, I think he's also been, I don't know if it's to say he's hearing voices, but ever so often I saw him talking to himself. Um, and he just believes that, people are after him and like his phone and everything are bugged. And it's just so, it's so weird because, growing up, he lived with us and he, like things were so like he had a lot going for him, and then things just shifted, and yeah, it's just been one thing after the next. And like my grandmother called me yesterday, and I don't know, that I think that is what kind of took me out, because in talking to him, I didn't really feel anything, because again, this is a man who I really haven't had a proper conversation with for like probably the last 10 years. My grandmother called and she was like, Mackenzie, it's getting really hard. And like, I need you to try to look for a therapist for him. And in hearing my grandmother's voice and hearing that it sounded like she was crying, like it really broke my heart a bit because again, talking to my uncle, I didn't feel anything towards that, but knowing that I have a connection with my grandmother and I talk to her really often, and knowing that this is something that was hurting her, it really kind of took me out. And yeah, and this is actually the first time I'm talking about this. So that's something I'm actively working on, especially with my dad, because we're looking for like a proper therapist for my uncle to see to ensure that he becomes better and he doesn't continue to harm himself.
I don't even know I don't know how to respond. Or, I don't know. I think yeah,
Because
yeah,
I
that
I
was a lot.
know the part when he mentioned how like his father doesn't really like understand it. That is be the serious thing. Like, cause you find out in a lot of like older folks and stuff, they don't really like well, yeah, understand how serious and complex that sort of stuff does be. And that is it's gonna be scary for the person too, because then it's like, well, what are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to do? Because I'll just say he was like somewhat aggressive and what's not. It's like, but it's just that's what it is. That's what it is.
Yeah, and I think it's so much to unpack as to why this is happening to him. Um, so like, he's a deportee. So, it could be that kind of triggered it. However, I mean, he had a good life up until he left his wife. And things just had to go downhill from there, and in my head, I don't know if that is a trigger because I mean, in my head, he was the one who left his wife and the wife didn't actually leave him. Um, but it's just been a series of negative things happening to him since that, you know? So who knows? I think it's definitely so much to unpack, and that is not my skill set. But as I said, in talking to him, I realized that he's really thinking about the past a lot.
But right, well, in his case, at least he's somewhat lucky in the sense that he had you to talk to and what's not, and hopefully he would get that sort of help sooner than later. But yeah, that's some serious stuff. Especially when it's happening to someone. Well, in your case, you said you haven't talked to me in like 10 years, but when you start witnessing that sort of happening to someone that's close to you, it is this it's feel more real. It is really, really feel more real. Sometimes you don't even know what to do. Like you want to help, but don't know how to help because sometimes they can't even like express what you can do. That's right away.
And at
So
the same time, you don't want like make a wrong suggestion or something and end up making it worse.
yes, I just don't want to come off like again as like aggressive or what's not. Is like so is just not a it's been a weird position. And that's why we're glad there are professionals out there that dedicate their life for that sort of stuff. Honestly, commend them for that.
I really can't imagine how that experience has been. Um, I think, yeah, I think that I don't even know, like, my experience this week has absolutely, it's has nothing. It's totally different. It's on a totally different level than that. And I mean, like, I feel like that is like on a higher experience in terms of unpacking. Um, has us thinking. Um,
For sure, for sure, for
and
sure.
and I know, if versus compared to the last episode, we were just flowing and flowing and flowing. But I think, that's a deep one. And there's so many, as McKinsey and Gregory mentioned, there's so many different elements to consider. But I think one of the important thing is, and I guess that we're reflecting on is, how we as men relate to mental health, mental wellness. I think that's something that, you know, we share across the Caribbean. It's not necessarily something that maybe specific to, well, not even, I don't think it's shared across the Caribbean. I think it's shared across the world in terms of how men relate to mental health. Uh,
For real. I think also like being aware of your emotions is a very powerful tool. Very, very powerful tool.
Yeah, I think that's where I think we fail as men because, like, for me, despite all the things that happened this week, I don't think I've properly processed it. And I think my whole life has been so many things happening that I have never really processed. And I don't have to say I've become immune to a lot of things that I think the average person wouldn't be immune to. And as I said before, I'm not sure if that's something good or not. Um, but yeah, because I remember when this year started, I had to have a conversation with my parents about um so last year when well the year before I actually was in the States for 4 months for exchange program. And when I came back to Trinidad, I mean it was the end of the year, so it was a new year. We're going into a new year. And I was just going through so much emotions in terms of, I was dating somebody when I was in the States. That ended because I mean, two different countries. Coming back to a place where I wasn't sure I wanted to be, and having this so much freedom in a whole other country, coming back to your parents, and it was just like so much emotions. And I remember the first, and well, for y'all who know about Trinidad, Trinidad is Carnival. So I came back and Carnival season was starting. So the first party I went, I was like, yeah. It had a song where they were saying we're going down till we lie down. And I tell my friends, yeah, I going right down till I lie down. So the amount of alcohol I consumed that night was crazy. I don't even know how I got home. Like and again, like I was going through so much emotions. I didn't care. I just wanted to, just forget about everything and and in the process, as I said, I didn't know I got home. I remember waking up and I'm like, okay, my shoes is there, my phone is missing. I, there was so many things just wrong. And my dad had like the following day, my dad had to have a conversation with me. And from that one experience, like every time I had to go out, my parents would tell me about, you know, don't drink too much. And that actually made me want to drink even more. So, I mean, it kind of continued for a little bit. Uh, and again, despite it continuing, let's say for 2, 3 months, for the entire year, my parents just had to like every time I had to go out, they're telling me, don't drink too much. And let me just say that I was so frustrated. It was only until this year began, I told them, listen, all you're making me want to drink more. So stop it. Right? Like I literally had to tell them that. And they've stopped. And I'm in a a way better place. Because it's like, okay, they finally stopped. I mean, my mother still stresses me out because she has to ask 20 questions before I leave the house. Right? But, I'm just in a much better place because now I don't feel like, okay, I have to depend on alcohol to enjoy myself and, try to push out any negative feelings I have, you know?
It's true. It is true.
Adding on to that, I think being aware of your emotions is a great thing, but is another thing to accept them because there's a lot of, well, I've experienced a lot of times where people like acknowledge how they feel, but they refuse to accept how they feel, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Kareem, as men, we aren't told to accept our feelings. We're
True.
told that we have to be strong
Yeah.
and we have to continue like fighting the good fight. So then how do we really shift that notion, shift that thought, you know? Because while
Yeah.
I want to be progressive, it's like I have to always maintain this strong footing, And that's because not only because of myself, but just because I am aware of all these organizations I'm attached to. Like I cannot afford to be weak when I am basically like like a face and I have to maintain this strength, you know?
Yeah, man, Makisi. You gotta show them it's good to be vulnerable. Being vulnerable is power.
No, I
I
think I think I
say
could.
that's something that is a work in progress, but
For
it's
sure, for sure. Yeah, you can't just wake up and do it. That is for sure.
Yeah.
And it's easy for me to say that because as you say, you're attached to a lot of different programs and companies and stuff. So it's obviously not like what do you think? Flip of a switch type thing. But for sure, I think a lot of more males need to allow themselves to be vulnerable. That's something I was always pushing from like they watch that we talking boys. Just being vulnerable is not weakness, honestly.
And I mean, I
Honestly.
think I can relate to what Makisi is saying, and I mean, again, Makisi is on. I totally believe Makisi is on a totally different level than me. Know when
Oh,
it
for
comes
sure.
to representing organizations. I don't know how he
100%.
gets it done, but over to you. But I think, yeah, I totally understand what Makishi's saying because sometimes you generally there's no physical weight on your shoulders, but like you generally feel the weight in terms of you have to do this, you have to there's so many different things that you have to do for whether it be NGOs or whether it be work and whether it be school. There's so many different ways that you have to show up. And personally, I am in a horrible state, but because I have to show up for an event or I have to show up representing an organization or representing an entity, I adapt this totally different persona. And unless you know me well enough that you may get that it may that my whatever is affecting me may slip from time to time, you're not going to realize it. And then sometimes it's hard to remove that persona because then now you've created kind of like this shield for yourself. And I guess it kind of, as Makisi was saying as well, it goes back to being a man and having to be strong and all these different things. And then sometimes you generally forget what, what you were processing or how you felt. And that's not a good thing. But it can be challenging. And I totally understand Makisi in terms of sometimes, and there's a phrase that some friends that I have used. Sometimes you crack. Sometimes you literally just have to crack on. But in cracking on, you kind of don't. You acknowledge that you have these emotions, or you acknowledge that you feel this way, but you don't necessarily accept it. You just crack on, And I think that's kind of challenging sometimes.
It's a fight. It's a battle,
It is. It is.
truly.
So Gregory,
Well,
Gregory is our vulnerable. I can call Gregory the vulnerability champion of a talking
Oh
place
yes.
because
Yes,
Gregory
yes.
has been talking about this since long even before we started in whenever 2020, I think it was. Yeah. But see,
Uh,
I'm gonna probe Gregory a little bit. You know, when we speak about vulnerability is really hard, and I think we can all agree, even though we actively try to be vulnerable in our spaces, in our lives, with each other, etc. It is really challenging. Because sorry, Kadeem call you up, but like, so this is so this is when they're talking to Kadeem. Is like, am I talking too much? Am I just being too much and like kind of what Makisi was saying earlier, like everybody has their own individual lives, and you don't want to be the person to add more to person's lives because everybody's going through something.
hmm
And it's like, yeah, but I mean, so basically what I was asking Gregory is, Gregory's no, we're gonna remember to write that down somewhere. Gregory's no vulnerability champion. How how
uh,
how how can we be vulnerable? And I mean that's we could all answer that question, but I think how can we
ah,
be genuinely vulnerable, but be vulnerable in a place that doesn't make us a vulnerability doesn't equal weakness, but
I
vulnerable in a place
I ain't
that
gonna
doesn't
lie.
make us weak.
For me it was heavily because of the environment I came up in, right? And like my sisters and my mother, I was raised by females, right? So it wasn't like the best time, I just say everybody's going through some stuff, but my mother and my sisters never like shy away when they were going through stuff. So when I was a little boy, outside playing, you come inside, mother door shut. It was like, why water my mother? What really going on? I unlocked the door, open the door, I gave my mother, but then you would like see them in a state and you tell yourself, well, I don't know what's going on, but she wouldn't shy away. She's like, well, this is life. This is real. So then that does make me know that when I start going through some stuff, when I start feeling some stuff, I never like shy away from showing it. And because of that, even like up to this day, whenever not in the right mind space or whatever, it is good to my mother. Sometimes it does good later next to she or talk to she and what's not. So I think it's heavily, heavily on who you have around you. So that if you got people around you that are willing to open it as well, it's gonna be a lot easier for you. If you're around people that
Yes.
just hard as a rock, it's gonna be very difficult to open up.
yes. I was honestly gonna
So
make that point or bring at that point or suggestion after Renato was finished talking about how he uses me as Ole and how sometimes he wonders if he is putting too much on me. I think, and I'm not saying this is it, but this is what I think, that one of the reasons why I feel that Renato could come to me and talk to me is because I make him feel safe and like he can actually be,
we're not cool.
yeah,
You
without
could,
feeling judged.
yeah, he can be himself.
And I think that a lot of people is like, what I'm trying to say is it's nice to have people around, but sometimes if it is you're constantly feeling or like in the back of your head you're asking yourself, is am I being too much on this person? Am I overloading them? Am I adding on to their stress already? And having them respond in a way that continuously makes you think that way, it subconsciously leads you to not want to be vulnerable or as vulnerable as you can
No,
be.
but as you said earlier, how you would ask, so I could give you a little band to know. You said earlier though, like there's nothing to me, there's nothing wrong. As you said, ask someone if
Yeah.
they're in the right mindset to do this right now. There's some people that just come on like drop everything one time. Then other times it's like you ready for this? you can handle this right now. If the answer is no, well, so be it. You would do
Yeah.
what you have to do besides that. But you also, yeah, if they say yes, go ahead. Don't be like, you sure? You think if they say yes, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead. Like
Like,
this is the sort of thing that you gotta share. Because if everybody was like that, we'd be cool. You'd be cool. But like it's you can't do it. Like humans are sociable. That's a word. I don't know if that's a word or not.
yeah,
But
it
we
is.
are
It is a
social
word.
creatures.
It's a word. It's a
We
word.
are we are very social creatures. The first thing we just do when we born is cry. We just cry for somebody to come to our aid. That's just us. So I don't know. That's just me on that, you know. Like if you could when you find out one person, if you could start with one person that you could hold on them. If they're willing to stay, as you got somebody for life. You got somebody for life. And then if y'all share that same mindset with other people, it would spread. And that's a good thing to spread. Not like, butter, but it's a good thing to spread.
There's truly a lot to unpack. When we speak about mental health, coping, vulnerability, um, I kind of it was kind of the whole thing sometimes that comes around like men don't cry. And the Gregory, I know Gregory mentioned it crying, and it was like, kind of just reflected on my week as well. I remember at one point it was just so much, and the most, people say you cry. Generally speaking, at that point, the only thing, I mean, I guess it's still crying, but literally a tear came out, and that was it for me. Not sure if anybody else has anything that they want to add. This is your last final call.
Singing is not for you. Please stop.
I used to sing back in the day, but
Back in the day, you were part of a band. That is so cool.
yo, that's weird. Yeah, I was actually. You were part of the
Yeah.
said band.
I was, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, you just come in and just say interesting. Yeah, I think I'm going to thank you, Gregory. Thank you, McKinsey. Thank you, Kadeem. Big shout outs to you guys. Just gonna run back through Gregory, our marketing guy, Kadeem, operations, McKinsey, um, who's serving as the Trinidad representative as well as deputy chair. Thank you so much. I think we've had an interesting conversation. This is just part one. Part two, we're gonna have a mental health expert joining us. But I think one of the things that I want to point out, and Makisi, I'll ask if you could share any key resource that Trinidad may have. One of the things that I do want to point out that at this time, if there is anything that was triggering, or if there's anything that persons who are listening to this podcast in Barbados may reflect upon that they may request based on their reflections on this conversation, and they want to have any access to mental health support. Barbados does have a 24-hour mental health hotline, and it can be accessed by dialing 536-4500, and that number is 536-536-4500, and that is a 24-hour mental health hotline. Um, and they are professionally trained to handle your calls. The hotline is actually called Lifeline Barbados, and I'll just repeat that number one more time: 536-4500. Yep. And Mikisi, are there any, for example, hotlines or any resources that if anybody's listening in Trinidad may be able to access? Kadima also going to prompt you if you know anything similar in the States as well.
Yes, I'm not sure of much of the resources in Trinidad, but there's definitely an organization called Farmers in Action, and they have a 24-hour hotline also for persons who are in need in terms of any mental illness and they need that person to talk to. And their number is, well, 868-2 Sorry, 868-628-2333. So that's 868-628-2333.
But the states, most cities or schools usually have their own mental health organizations. But one global number would be 866-467-0580, and that is the number of an organization called Triumph Healthcare. I'll repeat the number one more time. 866-467-0580. And that is the number to Triumph Healthcare.
Yep. So thank you so much, guys. Thanks again, Makisi, Kadeem. Well, Kadeem is 2 hours behind, so thanks for joining us at 6:45.
That
Thanks again, Gregory. Again, there's going to be a part two to this episode, where we're going to be having a live recording with our Discord membership. So feel free to join our Discord server. The link is available on all of our social medias, and the link will also be available in our episode description. So if you feel free to join the Discord server. Slight disclaimer, our Discord server is only open to those who are men. And you could find the links across our social media networks and also within our episode/show description on Spotify as well as Apple Podcasts. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to add, are there any closing remarks, anybody?
Um, just find something that helps you to cope with whatever situation that you're going through, whether it's listening to music, going on a walk, isolating yourself. Just find whatever helps you in your situation.
Yes, do not underestimate the issues mental health can cause.